let's continue reading the next portion. We just finished off in the middle of the chapter last time. Page 162. The stewardess handed me a glass bottle, exactly like the one I had been able to drink at the airport a few minutes before. I was suddenly starving, and I wish I had saved my candy bar instead of offering it to my brother. As if she had read my mind, she handed me a package of peanuts. First time on a plane? She asked. I nodded. For all of us. The words were bubbling out now, fizzing like a shook-up soda. It was a Christmas gift from Daddy. The stewardess smiled at me. How nice of him! I glanced over at Judy. She still had her eyes closed. Don't worry about your sister, said the stewardess. Some people get motion sickness. I'll get you a bag in case she needs to be ill. I nodded again. How about you, sweetie? Are you feeling okay? Great, I said, popping a handful of peanuts into my mouth. An iron stomach, she laughed. Maybe someday you'll grow up to be a stewardess like me. Then she turned away to take care of my mother and David. A stewardess like her, in a fancy blue uniform and flying in a plane like this every day. It sounded like a dream. I stared out the window and watched the clouds and the crops planted in neat rose squares. And I tried to remember every detail so I could tell Liz about it. Too soon, the stewardess came back, making sure we had our own seat belts fastened because there was no time to land. My eyes grew dry and I stared out the window, refusing to blink, refusing to miss a single second of watching the trees and roads and cars. The houses slowly grew larger and larger. There was a bump when we landed and I heard Mother cry out, but truthfully, it wasn't any worse than going over a pothole in a car. On the ground, I could feel how fast we were going. The brake screeched and we slowly came to a stop. Thank God, said Judy. She had the bag the stewardess had given her clutched in one hand. Amen, said Mother. I thanked God that neither of them had actually thrown up. We got out of our seats and followed the rest of the people to the front of the plane. The door to the cockpit was open and there were two men in uniform inside, with hundreds of buttons and wires behind them. They stood, greeting each one of the passengers as they exited. Hello there, the older man said to me. Did you enjoy the flight? I grinned, too overwhelmed to say anything. You don't even need to ask, Bill, said the younger man. Look at the way her eyes are shining. As soon as we got home, I called Liz. I told her all about the plane ride. Must have talked for 10 minutes straight. Turns out I have an iron stomach, I finished, and I didn't even know. Wow, said Liz. Wish I could have been there. Me too, I smiled. You know what? What? I was really scared of flying, and it turned out okay. No, not okay. Great. For the first time, I was thinking out loud, and it was fun. I think it might be time to try some other things I'm afraid of. Like what? Said Liz. I wasn't sure. I opened my mouth and just trusted that something would come out. Talking, I said. I think I'm going to try talking. Not just to you and Judy and all the people on my list, but to everyone. Good for you, Marley, said Liz, and she sounded proud. And if I change, maybe other things will change too. Maybe Sally will be nicer. Maybe Mother and I will find more in common. Maybe the schools will reopen. Maybe, said Liz, laughing. And then it was time to hang up. I wasn't really serious. I knew my talking wouldn't change all that. But as I drifted off to sleep, I thought about what Daddy had said when we were talking in the car. He'd said that things could be different in Little Rock if only the right people could find their voice. I wanted to be one of those people. Chapter 33, New Year's Resolutions. The first day of school after winter break, I woke up early. Pretty boy chirped at me from his cage. Yes, I said, pulling on the new pink sweater. It is a beautiful day. Mr. Harding asked for the answer to number 14, and no one spoke up. So I raised my hand, and it was the first time I'd volunteered an answer. And he grinned just like David as he called on me. I got it right, of course. 6,049 divided by 23 is 263. The other kids stared, and their eyes on me made my skin crawl. But then Mr. Harding called on someone else, and the itchy feeling was gone. At lunchtime, I asked Mr. Harding if we could work on algebra every other day so I could still see the other kids too. He nodded. You know, Marley, engineers work in groups. I think that's a great idea. So for the first time in a long time, I walked back to the cafeteria. I stood in front of the closed doors and concentrated, imagining myself a princess, making a grand entrance at a ball. I counted 13, 17, 19, 23, pushed open the doors and went inside. No one even looked up. JT was at a far table, talking with his friends. Little Jimmy sat alone, and Nora and Sally were at our old table. I silently counted my steps as I walked over to them. Hi, I said. It came out a lot louder and thriller than I intended. But when Sally looked up, she smiled. Marley, she said, you're back. Nora pulled out a chair for me. You all done with the math stuff? Not all done, I said, sitting down. But the rest can wait until tomorrow. This was easier than I thought. Doing math for fun? Sally laughed. Marley, you're such a square. Or not so easy after all. I couldn't believe Sally was starting again with all the insults. And I hadn't even been there for 5 minutes. I touched a feather in my pocket. This time I wasn't going to let it go. I don't think math is fun, I said, but don't call me a square. Oh, sorry, she said, I do think math is fun, but don't call me a square. Sally rolled her eyes. I was just teasing. Don't be so sensitive. It's mean, I said, and I don't like it. Sally looked at Nora as if to say, can you believe her? Nora shrugged. She's right. Sometimes you are kind of mean. Sally opened and closed her mouth several times. I could almost see the words floating through her head as she struggled to find something to say. Finally, she just shrugged. Sorry, she said. Nora gave a serious giggle. Nora gave a nervous giggle. Sally had never apologized before. I shrugged too. I am probably a little square, I said, and we all laughed. Nora started talking about winter break. It felt good to sit back and eat my cheese sandwich and listen to her complain about little sisters and socks for presents and all sorts of normal things. Then I remembered I didn't have to just sit back and listen. I could say something too. I could tell them about the airplane ride. I was trying to find the right moment to speak up when JT walked over to our table. Hi, Marley, he said, real friendly. I need a favor. I gave him a look. It was supposed to mean, go away and leave me alone. But apparently he thought it meant, please go on, because he kept talking. Mr. Harding said I was missing a couple of assignments. He put a piece of paper down on top of my sandwich. They're listed there. You can give them to me tomorrow in homeroom. I was beginning to think JT was like a nasty phone call. Phone calls. Scary, but all hot air. And there was only one way to find out if I was right. No, I said. What? I'm not doing your homework anymore. I braced myself for his anger. The shock, the threats, the drama of the shy little quiet girl saying no to the big, strong football player. But JT didn't look surprised. He didn't even look irritated. He seemed kind of amused. In fact, he was grinning at me. I always knew you were a pretty girl, Marley. But you're even cuter when you're angry. I'm not angry. Of course I was angry. I'd been doing his homework all year. He shrugged. It's no problem. I'll just find someone else to do the work for me. You can't do that, I said. It's cheating. JT laughed. Of course, it had been cheating when I'd done it too, but I prefer not to dwell on the fact. I like your pink sweater, JT called out as he walked off. I wasn't sure if I was proud of myself for finally standing up to him or embarrassed that it had taken me so long to do so. The next Tuesday at the Rock Crusher, I was planning on telling Liz all about standing up to Sally and JT. But as soon as I got there, Liz started talking. You know Curtis, right? Betty Jean's son? Yes, Liz blushed. Liz blushed, which made me even more curious to know what was going on. He's in youth group with me at church and in the 9th grade at Dunbar. But he never spoken to me. Then today he saw me writing in my journal, and he came over to see what I was doing. We started talking, and we realized we both know you. That's great. Actually, I was worried. What if she dumped me for him like Judy had done with Robert Lawrence? I wanted her to stop exploding when she teased, not get a boyfriend. But I couldn't say that, so I just asked. You didn't tell him we were still friends, did you? No, said Liz, but I think he guessed. Yeah, I said. I think little Jimmy guessed too. He says hi. Hi. Liz looked pleased. You can tell him hi back. How long can we keep this up? I asked. I don't know, said Liz, but I hope for a really long time. I hope so too.